Sell the house, Mom. We want our share. The words hit me harder than the church bells that had tolled at your father's funeral just weeks ago. My own son, Michael, stood in the middle of my living room, arms crossed, his jaw set like a man delivering a business ultimatum instead of speaking to the mother who had carried him into this world. If you're watching this, subscribe and tell me where you're listening from, because sometimes the cruelest betrayals don't come from enemies or strangers. They come from the people you spent your whole life loving. My name is Eleanor Hayes, though most people call me Ellie. I'm 68 years old, recently widowed, and for the first time in my life, I was learning what loneliness truly feels like. Robert, my husband of 43 years, had been buried less than 2 months when Michael decided to bury something else, our relationship. Your share? I repeated, my voice trembling but my eyes locked on his. Michael, this house is not just numbers on a paper. This is your father's legacy. He didn't flinch. Dad would want us taken care of, Mom. Claire and I are drowning in bills. The kids need space. You don't need all this. Behind him, Claire, my daughter-in-law, leaned against the doorway with that smug smile I'd grown used to. She folded her manicured hands and spoke as if she owned the place. It's common sense, Eleanor. You're rattling around this big house alone. Better to sell while the market's high. Split the proceeds fairly. I set down the teacup trembling in my hand. The porcelain rattled against the saucer. Fairly? After 40 years of marriage, after watching Robert lay every brick with his own hands, you call selling this home fair? Michael's eyes darkened. Stop being sentimental. This isn't about memories. It's about money. Money, I whispered. The word tasted like ashes. And what about me? What about where I live? Where I belong? You'll figure it out, Claire said coolly. You always do. Maybe a small apartment, maybe a retirement place. Don't make this harder than it has to be. I rose from Robert's armchair. His chair, the one that still smelled faintly of pipe, tobacco, and aftershave. My grief twisted into something sharper, something burning in my chest. Harder? I said, my voice steady now. The only thing hard here is realizing my son cares more about square footage than about his mother. Michael shifted, unease flickering across his face. But pride is a stubborn thing. He straightened his shoulders. It's not like that. We deserve our share. Deserve? I snapped, my palm slamming down on the oak desk by the window. You'll see what you deserve soon enough. The room fell silent, the rain outside tapping against the windows like 1,000 tiny hammers. Claire looked startled for the first time. Michael clenched his jaw, but I could see doubt creep into his eyes. What they didn't know, what neither of them suspected, was that Robert had already made his decision long before his heart stopped beating. He had left me the one weapon I would need for the war that was about to begin. Because this wasn't just a house. This was a battlefield. The funeral should have been about Robert, about honoring the man who built this family with his bare hands. Instead, it felt like a silent audition for who would claim his legacy. The church was filled with white lilies, his favorite, their fragrance mingling with the heavy incense. I clutched the folded program, my knuckles white, as the priest spoke about faith, endurance, and eternal rest. But I couldn't hear him. All I could hear was Michael's voice from the night before, cold as steel. Sell the house. We want our share. After the service, relatives swarmed around me. Eleanor, you're so strong. Eleanor, he's in a better place. Their voices blurred together, but one scene burned clear. Michael standing apart with Claire, whispering. I caught only fragments. Mortgage. Market value. Move fast. Not words of mourning. Words of business. At the reception in the fellowship hall, I tried to find comfort in the photographs displayed on easels. Robert in his Navy uniform. Robert holding baby Michael. Robert and me on our wedding day, sunburned but smiling in the old black and white print. Each image was a reminder of a man who had worked 2 jobs, sacrificed vacations, and poured his soul into building this house brick by brick. And yet, in the corner of the room, Claire leaned in to one of Robert's cousins, her voice carried, sharp as broken glass. "It doesn't make sense for Eleanor to keep the place. It's too much for her. Michael and I could put it to good use." The cousin nodded uncomfortably. I clenched my jaw so hard my teeth ached. My husband wasn't even buried in the ground yet, and my daughter-in-law was already circling like a vulture. Later that evening, when the last casserole dish had been carried out and the last mourner gone home, I sat alone at the dining table. The silence pressed in. Robert's chair at the head of the table was empty. A void so loud, it nearly broke me. The grandfather clock ticked in the hallway. Tick, tock, a sound he used to wind every Sunday morning. Now it mocked me with every swing of its pendulum. Michael appeared in the doorway. His tie loosened, his eyes unreadable. "You doing okay, Mom?" he asked, as if reading from a script. I looked at him, searching for my boy, the one who used to chase fireflies in the backyard while Robert clapped and cheered. But all I saw was a man calculating numbers in his head. "I'm managing," I said flatly. Claire joined him, her heels clicking on the hardwood Robert polished every spring. She ran her hand along the banister, her eyes sweeping the house like a realtor, appraising a property. "This place must be hard for you, Eleanor. So many memories. Don't you think it's time to let go?" I rose from my chair, gripping the back of it for support. "Your father isn't even cold in the ground," I said, my voice low but sharp. "And you're already talking about selling his house." Michael glanced at Claire, then back at me. His tone was softer than hers, but no less dangerous. "It's not just about you anymore, Mom. You need to think about the rest of us." I turned away, because if I looked at him a second longer, I might have said the words that would shatter us forever. That night, lying in Robert's side of the bed, I made a silent vow. They thought I was weak, broken, too old to fight, but they had no idea what Robert had left behind, or how far I was willing to go to protect it. This wasn't grief anymore. This was war. The first sign came a week later. I was in the kitchen, standing over Robert's old percolator, brewing coffee the way he liked it, dark, strong, almost bitter. When I heard unfamiliar voices in the living room, I wiped my hands on a dish towel and stepped out, only to find a tall man in a sharp gray suit admiring the crown molding. "Great bones," he said, running his fingers along the woodwork. "With a few updates, this place could fetch top dollar." Behind him stood Claire, smiling like a cat that had cornered a mouse. "Eleanor, this is Mr. Davis. He's a realtor." Michael and I thought it wouldn't hurt to get an appraisal. I froze in the doorway. "An appraisal?" Michael appeared from the foyer, looking guilty but trying to mask it with a casual shrug. "Mom, don't overreact. We're just exploring options." "Exploring options?" I echoed, my voice shaking. "This is my home." Claire tilted her head, that patronizing tone dripping from her words. "You mean the house. And houses are just assets, things to be managed. Better to make smart decisions now than wait until it falls apart." I could feel my pulse pounding in my ears. "Robert built this house with his own hands. It's not just an asset." The realtor cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable. "I can come back another time." "No," Claire interrupted briskly. "You're here now. Please, take a look around." Michael rubbed the back of his neck, not meeting my eyes. "Mom, don't make this harder than it has to be." I stepped forward, planting myself between the realtor and the staircase. "No one takes a step further in this house without my permission." For a moment, the room went still. Claire's smile faltered. Michael's jaw tightened. The realtor fumbled with his briefcase, mumbling something about miscommunication. Finally, Claire broke the silence, her voice sharp as a blade. Eleanor, you can't live in the past forever. This house is too big, too expensive to maintain. Sooner or later, it's going to fall to us anyway. Her words sliced through me. Sooner or later. Like they were already waiting for me to die. Michael finally looked up, his expression hard. You can't keep it forever, Mom. I stared at him, my son, my flesh and blood, and for the first time I saw a stranger. The realtor shifted awkwardly, sensing the tension. I'll be in touch, he said, and made a hasty exit, leaving the three of us in suffocating silence. Claire broke it first. You're being selfish, Eleanor. You're clinging to memories while your family struggles. I drew myself up, my voice low but steady. Selfish? No, Claire. What's selfish is standing in the house your father-in-law built, already treating it like it's for sale, before the ground has settled on his grave. Michael's face flushed with anger. This conversation isn't over. End of chapter. No, I said quietly, looking between them. It's only just begun. Because in that moment, I knew. Robert had been right to leave everything in my name. He must have seen this coming, long before I did. And if they thought I would roll over and let them take it, they were about to learn just how wrong they were. That night, after Michael and Claire stormed out, the house fell into the kind of silence that presses against your chest. I sat at Robert's old oak desk, the lamp casting a weak yellow glow, and pulled open the bottom drawer. The envelope was still there. Heavy, sealed, Robert's handwriting steady and sure on the front. Last will and testament. My fingers trembled as I traced the letters. He'd written it 6 months before he died, when his heart had already started to falter, but he refused to admit it to anyone but me. I remembered the night clearly. Ellie, he had said, sliding the papers across the table. If something happens, I need you to be protected. Michael means well, but Claire, he paused, shaking his head. She's got eyes on things that don't belong to her, I'd argued. Robert, he's our son. He would never. He just looked at me with those steady brown eyes. He's her husband now. Blood doesn't always win against influence. Now, sitting alone in that same house, I finally understood. Robert hadn't been paranoid. He had been prophetic. With a deep breath, I broke the seal and unfolded the will. The words leapt out at me, firm and undeniable. I, Robert Hayes, leave all my property, real and personal, including the family residence and vehicles, solely to my wife, Eleanor Hayes. It is my will that she alone decide how these assets shall be managed, with no obligation to distribute or share with any other party, including my son, Michael Hayes. My breath caught in my throat. It wasn't just the house. It was everything. The cars, the savings account, even the pension, all in my name. I pressed the paper to my chest, tears sliding down my cheeks. For the first time since his death, I felt Robert's presence again, protective, strong, still shielding me, even from the grave. But grief quickly gave way to anger. Michael's words echoed. You can't keep it forever, Mom. Claire's sneer. Sooner or later, it's ours. They thought I was powerless, that I would crumble under their pressure. They didn't know I held the one weapon Robert had left me. The next morning, I tucked the will back into its envelope and locked it away. I wasn't ready to show my hand yet. Not until I had to. At breakfast, Michael came by again, his tone falsely casual. Mom, about yesterday, Claire and I were just trying to help. You can't manage this place alone. Think about the upkeep. Think about taxes. I sipped my coffee, hiding the smile tugging at my lips. Don't worry about me, Michael. Your father and I thought of everything. He frowned. What's that supposed to mean? Just that your father trusted me, I said softly, and he left things. Very clear. Claire's eyes narrowed. For the first time, I saw uncertainty flicker there. I stood, carrying my cup to the sink. You should both remember something, I said, my voice steady. This house doesn't belong to you. Not now. Not ever. And if you push me, you might regret learning just how much your father really knew. The silence that followed was thick as thunderclouds. They thought they were circling prey, but I had the will of a dead man, and soon they would learn it was stronger than both of them combined. It happened on a Sunday afternoon. The sky outside was gray, the kind of sky that made the house feel even emptier. Michael and Claire arrived unannounced, their voices echoing down the hallway before I even saw their faces. Mom, we've been talking, Michael began, striding into the living room like he owned the place. We've decided the best course is to put the house on the market this spring. Claire followed, carrying a folder bulging with papers. We've already spoken to 2 realtors, she added smoothly. They both agree this place could sell quickly. We'll get a good price. I sat in Robert's chair, the will envelope resting on my lap. My hands no longer trembled. My grief had sharpened into something steadier. Resolve. Michael, I said, my voice calm. Do you want to know what your father wanted? He blinked, caught off guard. Of course. That's what this is about. Dad would want. Then listen. I opened the envelope and pulled out the document. The sound of paper unfolding was louder than thunder in that silent room. This is your father's will. Written. Signed. Witnessed. No questions. No doubts. Claire's eyes narrowed. Michael stepped closer, his brow furrowed. What does it say? I read aloud, my voice steady as stone. I, Robert Hayes, leave all my property, real and personal, including the family residence, solely to my wife, Eleanor Hayes. The words hung in the air like a verdict. Michael's face drained of color. What? Claire's composure cracked, her voice rising shrill. That can't be right. He wouldn't cut out his own son. I looked directly at her. Your father-in-law wasn't a fool. He knew who he could trust. And it wasn't you. Michael snatched the paper from my hand, scanning the lines as if his eyes might find some loophole the ink hadn't provided. This doesn't make sense. Dad always said family shares everything. Did he? I asked quietly. Then why did he write the opposite? Claire stepped forward, her face flushed with fury. Because you made him. You manipulated him, didn't you? Old women like you, always whispering, always twisting words. Enough, Claire, I snapped. My voice echoed through the house, sharper than I intended. Your father left this to me because he saw something long before I did. He saw greed. He saw selfishness, and he wanted to protect me from it. Michael's hands shook as he shoved the will back into its envelope. So that's it? You get everything? And I get nothing? I'm his son. I met his gaze, tears pricking the corners of my eyes. And I am his wife, the one who stood by him through sickness and health, through 30 years of mortgage payments, through every storm. He trusted me to carry what he built. That was his choice. The silence that followed was suffocating. Claire's eyes blazed with hatred. Michael's shoulders slumped, but his jaw stayed clenched. This isn't over, he said finally, his voice low, almost a growl. I leaned back in Robert's chair, my hands folded calmly over the envelope. No, I said softly, it isn't. Because what they didn't realize was that showing them the will wasn't surrender. It was a declaration. The battle lines had been drawn. The phone rang just after breakfast. I expected it to be a neighbor checking in. Instead, it was Linda, Robert's sister. Her voice was sharp, colder than the December wind outside. Eleanor, I just spoke with Michael. He says you're refusing to share a dime of Robert's estate. Tell me that isn't true. I gripped the receiver tightly. Linda, your brother left everything to me. It wasn't my decision, it was his will. She gave a bitter laugh. Convenient. Robert would never shut out his own son. You must have pressured him. Before I could reply, she hung up. By noon, 3 more calls came: cousins, old friends, even the pastor's wife. Each one repeated Michael's words. I was hoarding everything. I was pushing him into debt. I was selfish. That Sunday at church, the whispers were louder than the choir. I felt eyes burning into my back as I walked to my pew. Normally, Mrs. Jenkins would squeeze my hand. Normally, the Thompsons would smile and offer me pie after service. This time, heads turned away. Across the hall, Michael and Claire played their parts perfectly. Claire dabbed her eyes with a tissue, her voice just loud enough for others to hear. It's been so hard. We only asked for a little help, but she slammed the door in our faces. Michael stood beside her, nodding solemnly like some martyred saint. People gathered around, murmuring, patting his back. Not one person came to me. That evening, I went to the grocery store. The cashier, who usually showed me pictures of her grandkids, barely made eye contact. Behind me in line, I caught 2 women whispering. Can you believe it? Keeping everything for herself. Poor Michael. After all he's done for her. My cheeks burned. I left half my groceries behind just to get out of there. That night, the house felt heavier than ever. I sat in Robert's chair, staring at the framed photo of us on our wedding day. My husband had known this storm would come. That's why he left everything in my name to shield me from their greed. But now it wasn't just my son and his wife. It was the entire world outside these walls, ready to brand me a villain. I pressed my palm against the will, my voice a whisper but filled with steel. Robert, you trusted me, and I will not let them take this from me. Because the truth was clear. Gossip could tarnish my name, but it couldn't change the ink on that paper, and soon enough they would find out. The letter arrived in a crisp white envelope stamped with the logo of a law firm. At first, I thought it was another bill, or maybe a church bulletin, but the bold black letters across the top made my knees go weak. Petition for partition of estate. My own son was dragging me into court. I sat at the kitchen table, the paper shaking in my hands. The words blurred, but their meaning was clear. Michael was demanding the judge force me to sell the house so he could take his share. Not requests now. Not whispers in the church hall. Cold, legal war. By afternoon, I was sitting in a leather chair in Mr. Grant's office. The same lawyer Robert and I had trusted years ago when we drew up the will. He flipped through the petition, his eyebrows rising. Mrs. Hayes, he said finally, adjusting his glasses. This case has no legal foundation. Your husband's will is clear. The property passes entirely to you. Michael doesn't have a claim. Then why am I here? My voice cracked. He sighed. Because sometimes lawsuits aren't about winning. They're about pressure. Your son is hoping you'll settle. Maybe sell the house. To make peace. I clenched my fists in my lap. I won't settle. Robert didn't raise me to fold at the first fight. Mr. Grant gave a faint smile. Good. Because Claire will play the victim. Judges are human. Sympathy can cloud judgment. We'll need to be prepared. Calm, factual, unwavering. That evening, the phone rang again. Michael. His tone was flat, almost rehearsed. Mom, I just want you to know this isn't personal. It's just business. I gripped the receiver so hard my knuckles turned white. Business? Carrying you for 9 months? Staying up all night when you had asthma attacks? Working double shifts so you could go to college? That's business? Silence. Then, softer. Dad wanted me to have something. And, 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 oh, and, 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 all, and, all, all, and, your father gave you everything while he was alive, I said firmly. What he left behind, he left to me. That was his choice, not mine. The line went dead. I set the phone down and stared out at the dark yard Robert had mowed every Saturday for 40 years. My son thought he could scare me with papers and lawyers. But I had something stronger than threats. I had Robert's will. I had Robert's words. And I had the strength of a woman who had already buried the love of her life and survived. If Michael wanted a courtroom, that was exactly where I'd meet him. The courthouse smelled of old paper and polished wood, the kind of place where truth and lies collided under fluorescent lights. I sat at the respondent's table with Mr. Grant beside me, the will locked safely in his briefcase. Across the aisle, Michael and Claire whispered furiously, their lawyer straightening his tie with smug confidence. "All rise," the bailiff called. The judge entered, expression unreadable, and the trial began. Michael's attorney spoke first, his tone smooth, dripping with practiced sympathy. "Your Honor, this is not about greed, but about fairness. My client, Michael Hayes, grew up with the understanding, repeated verbal assurances that one day this home would be his. His father told him so countless times. The written will may say otherwise, but surely the intent of a father's words cannot be ignored." Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. My chest tightened. Robert never said such a thing. But before I could speak, Mr. Grant stood. "With respect, Your Honor, the petitioner offers only hearsay. The law deals not in vague memories but in written truth. And the written truth here is crystal clear." He held up the will. "This document, drafted and signed by Robert Hayes, leaves the entire estate to his wife, Eleanor Hayes." The judge nodded, but Michael's lawyer pressed on. "Families don't always write down their promises. Sometimes intent lives in words." Michael trusted his father's assurances. I rose, unable to stay silent. My voice shook but carried. Robert promised Michael opportunity and education, a future. But he never promised him this house. He built this home for us, for our marriage, not as a bargaining chip. Claire suddenly burst out, her voice shrill. "That's a lie! Robert told us this house would pass to Michael. Everyone knew it." "Order," the judge barked. Mr. Grant remained calm. "Your Honor, if I may." I anticipated such claims. From his briefcase, he drew a smaller folded note, the edges yellowed. "This is a handwritten addendum by Robert Hayes, attached to the will. It reads, 'The house shall go to Eleanor alone. Michael has his own life and should build his own home with his wife, not take ours.'" Gasps filled the courtroom. Even the judge raised an eyebrow. Michael went pale. Claire gripped his arm, whispering, but his hands shook as he stared at his father's unmistakable handwriting. The judge leaned forward. "It appears the deceased anticipated precisely this dispute. Unless you can produce stronger evidence, this court will have no choice but to honor his explicit wishes." Michael's lawyer stammered. "Your Honor, we have nothing further." The gavel struck once. The sound echoed like thunder. For the first time in weeks, I allowed myself to breathe. Robert's words, his handwriting had silenced the lies. And in that moment, I knew. My husband had been watching over me all along. The judge's gavel struck one final time. "This court rules in favor of the respondent, Mrs. Eleanor Hayes. The property and assets are lawfully hers, as stated in the will." Silence fell like a curtain. I closed my eyes, a wave of relief washing over me. Robert's wishes had been honored. His trust in me had not been in vain. Michael sat slumped in his chair, his face a mixture of anger and defeat. Claire hissed something in his ear, but he didn't answer. For the first time, he looked small to me, not the boy I raised, but a man consumed by greed, left hollow when it slipped through his fingers. As I left the courtroom, relatives who had once avoided my eyes now whispered apologies, but I walked past them without a word. They hadn't stood by me when the gossip spread. Robert had, and that was enough. That night, I sat in Robert's chair by the window, the will folded neatly on the table beside me. The rain tapped against the glass, just as it had the night Michael first demanded his share. But now the house felt different, stronger, safe again. I touched the frame of Robert's photo, whispering softly, "I kept my promise. Love, our home is still ours." Because in the end, this battle was never about bricks or property. It was about love, trust, and legacy. Money can be divided, possessions can be sold, but once family betrays you, that wound never truly heals. And as I sat there in the quiet, I knew one truth above all. I had lost my husband, but I would not lose the home we built together.